Welcome to the My Rules Are Better podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today, I'm not sure whether this is an essential service or not. I've had the experience of recording a model rail radio this morning and been told in no uncertain terms that I need to be recording more model rail radios, so I'm extending that to probably a weekly podcast. At least recording it. I don't know about putting it out, but let's just say recording it will become a weekly podcast. And I've tried to maintain a certain frequency with regards to My Rules Are Better. A lot of this is in the front of my mind as I look at a series of neatly organized shelves. I'm looking in particular at my work system beta that I probably need to go through a little bit more, organize a little bit better. But yes, slowly but surely, the organization part of this thing is coming together. And my podcasting room is slowly, I still have 5 piles of things to clean up on my podcasting table. But that thing is coming together, and shortly my hope will be that I will be able to start video casting again. I have to send a shout out to not a listener to this particular podcast, but a long-time participant in Model Rail Radio, a fellow by the name of Bernie Kopinski, who has started doing bolt-action World War II YouTube videos. And I said to him that this was really important. In fact, it's motivating me to create more videos when I have the opportunity, or at least work towards creating more videos accordingly. So my anticipation is that more videos will certainly be coming shortly. I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of different phenomena, a couple of different ideas that are coming through this particular time. One came through a series of text messages from Matthew Gibson, and my hope is that I will have the opportunity to talk to Matthew in the near future. Matthew is lamenting a lack of miniatures that he has currently, the anti-problem, actually, of my current situation. And he's saying that he wants to try Napoleonics, but he has never had any Napoleonic miniatures. There are a wide variety of ways that you can actually do Napoleonics without miniatures. One of my favorites is clothespins, which you can do in kind of ranked order, and each represents maybe 10 men or what have you. But also you can do it just with paper quite easily, and the formations are such that you can organize them with paper accordingly. Although it doesn't have the same aesthetic properties, you can still do quite a lot of like Napoleonic-style warfare just with paper. And in terms of rules, I used to have a series of free rules online that I maintained and actually quite liked from Alien Star, and I still have the PDFs. So if listeners are interested, please do get in contact with me. Bravo Alpha Romeo, Bravo Alpha Lima Echo Tango, with the view that I will send the PDFs on to people that are interested. I also received the Crossfire rules through the week, and my plan was, I follow a fellow on YouTube called Lindy Beige, and I've been a fan of his stuff. I mean, he represents very strongly the kind of obsessive amateur historian, of which certainly I feel, in some regard, part of that cadre. And he recommended the Crossfire rules. They're a series of World War II skirmish rules where you don't use rulers. And it's an interesting rules dynamic of just eliminating the kind of measured, ranged weaponry and just playing a game based on other factors. So that initial pitch I thought was very good. And then I received the rules and I was like, well, this is a very different thing. To actually see the rules here is a very different thing in and of itself. So, I don't know. My personal feeling is, and this is coming very strongly associated with the kinds of contact that I'm having, remote contact at least, is that people are really more into a kind of nostalgia phase currently than they are associated with their own rules creation. And I think what's interesting in Matthew Gibson's text messages is there's a kind of juxtaposition of a lot of contact that I'm receiving associated with the kind of golden age of Games Workshop in one regard, and also folks that are just interested in creating their own rules. In parallel to this, I'm doing a lot of development in my own software, although work has not slowed down through this period. I'm spending a lot of time working on my own software in a kind of catharsis role. And in particular, my urban simulation, which has its origins in very kind of skirmish-oriented wargaming, kind of top-down battles. So the ability to have the urban simulation to a level where you do have kind of large cityscapes or urban environments that can, are fundamentally dynamic, so you can change absolutely everything through that, provides a lot of interesting, online wargaming scenario kind of stuff. And certainly when I talked to Barney last formal recording with him, we were talking about using the existing tabletop simulator. Well, I don't know. When you write your own software, it's a very difficult kind of thing because you have something slightly better than the tabletop simulator already native for you. And to be able to put, for example, the Just Plain Chaos rules into this environment and offer it on Mac and Windows and the potential for Linux as well, you're really covering all possible bases in an environment that you fundamentally control all the components to versus, learning something new through Tabletop Simulator, although there may be some benefit there. But again, one of the problems associated with these things is you need to spend a certain amount of time studying the population and putting time into the population. And I certainly think what I'm finding currently is my time is better spent in things that I have some existing knowledge of, or at least, I don't know. And I think that's interesting in the notion of rules creation as well, because the luxury of, creating your own rules and these kind of things is, I don't want to necessarily say it's a casualty of this time, but I just think the ability to get players for your rule systems is more difficult when you're all on lockdown. Whereas having software that, people can download and use remotely is a very different thing. So my plan is to get the urban simulation to a point where I can do demonstrations, even of the Just Plain Chaos rules through this urban simulation stuff. And then that exists in a thing in and of itself. You could produce YouTube videos, and with the software available for download, people just download it and, it propagates that way. So I'm slightly more moving towards that than what I talked about with regards to kind of blue sky discussion with Barney a couple of weeks ago. But I think also the phenomena has changed really in my own thinking associated with what this thing would look like. I mean, I don't know what I was thinking 2 weeks ago associated with how long I thought this thing would go for, but my feeling is currently that basically all estimates are off and we could be looking at, months of this just being the normal. And certainly things like doing, live video streams through YouTube, I think that's certainly probably, I'm 2 to 4 weeks away from that. I have a vast quantity of painted miniatures. I'm in the opposite position, although I don't have any Napoleonics. I have one Napoleonic figure painted. But, I'm in the opposite position of Matthew Gibson. I'm actually spoilt for stuff currently. And I was thinking about this with regards to the quote-unquote old Hammer community. I could play Rogue Trader games and stream those in terms of just maximizing the level of interest, or even 3rd edition, Warhammer 40k, or, Fantasy Battle even. So I'm in this thing where I've got the rules and the miniatures to do a bunch of this stuff. I mean, I would be doing probably Chaos versus Undead or whatever they are in their respective, guises. That would be an easy one to do because I have those old Hammer armies ready. So, I'm certainly thinking about this time it's associated with when I have the time and the luxury and the space, which I have some of those things currently, what would be the best way to reach out to a community? And Just Plain Chaos through, Google Hangout stream might be useful in some cases initially, but I think to get the viewers and the interest and the discussion going, and then maybe slipping in some of my own rules, or at least talking about that as part of the process. And I think certainly Rogue Trader lends itself to that in part because so little of it was actually written down. Like the need for house rules through something like Rogue Trader is far greater, obviously, than current Warhammer 40,000. So, I'm sympathetic to these ideas currently, but I'm also thinking very strongly about where would my, as I have limited free time, I am not in the luxury, unfortunately, of having copious quantities of time free through the week. What I have currently is trying to maximize the free time I have for luxury purposes, or frivolous purposes, let us just say. So I'm currently thinking about, okay, so this thing goes on for, say, 3 to 6 months. I have a space here, I have video here, I have the internet, thankfully, still. What kinds of things can I pull together in this time? My camera's slightly more limited. I've got various iOS devices, and I actually also have Nest now. What were they previously? Drop cams. So I have a few of those. Could utilize those, particularly the nature of security when we're all home, less important. So it'd be interesting actually to play one of these games with 2 drop cams at either end, or maybe even 3 drop cams, all streaming live. And I think that's an interesting testing case, which I might get into in the near future, because certainly to have the luxury of all these things and the ability to stream them live, let's see what happens. Certainly the My Rules Are Better website could be an interesting place to put the feeds up for these things and do, a day or two's worth of gaming sessions, maybe over a weekend or something like that. So all these possibilities are there, particularly with live video. But yeah, I'm really still in the early stages of just getting the space ready, which I think probably will take me a weekend, at least a weekend more, and then start to utilize the space a lot better. And there's quite a bit of still wasted space or space that could be used better. So I'm very much in the mindset of getting cleared up what needs to be cleared up. Certainly the bed in my room is almost clear, but there are lots of other little bits and pieces that need to be tidied up. So just working through all this and getting things in a position where I can start doing video again, and then we'll see where it goes. I think certainly the feedback I've received on, miniature unboxings and things like that, I can go through a lot of the miniatures I have here through this as well as a means of getting people watching, and then drop in games and other stuff through this. So all to be continued, and right now I'm just kind of rambling, I guess, in the need to put out audio. So yeah, all coming soon, working through it as the space becomes more available, which it is thankfully. We will, see where this thing pans out. So Tom Barbalet in the San Francisco Bay Area, offering a variety of bits and pieces, and no doubt, in the next 2 to 3 days, something dramatic will happen, and I'll have the opportunity to clear stuff off and record a video cast or whatever, and, let's see. I think these things could change quite quickly. So stay tuned for more.